when October 7th happened, within a day, October 8th and 9th even, and we have a report on this on our website where you can see it. Many of the human rights NGOs were already calling the situation genocide against Palestinians. And remember, this was before Israel even went into Gaza. This was weeks before Israel even went into Gaza. So immediately they began using genocide, and also starvation was coming up. So I believe they were doing this for two purposes. We have to look at the legal stuff that's happening also, and UNRWA is a part of this. Is that the conflict that's been going on the past year? It has two components. We have the military component and we have the information component. And these organizations are fundamental players in the information component. And what the charges, even initially, even of genocide and starvation were doing was a way to invert and deny the atrocities that took place against Israelis on October 7th. Because when you looked at what happened in the massacre and the rapes and the torture, all this horrible stuff, this shifted the narrative. Because up until that point, was this narrative of the evil, the oppressed Palestinians, victims, agentless Palestinians against the evil Israeli oppressors. But October 7th upended that narrative. The way they could reclaim that narrative was then flipping it and calling it genocide and using things like starvation, because again, these are very hyperbolic and extreme terms. So that's why they began to start using this. And and to their credit, they're very clever. These organizations, they have a lot of money and they're very clever. So even in October, we started to see letters, again, before there was even any incursion into Gaza, any ground incursion. We started to see letters from these NGOs to government officials in the UK, for instance, in the Netherlands, already accusing Israel of genocide and calling on these countries to impose an arms embargo. And when those letters didn't work, many of these groups decided to sue their governments to have courts impose an arms embargo. So we saw cases, and some of them are still pending, but cases have been filed in the Netherlands, the UK, Germany, France, the US, Canada had, Canada I think was more lobbying, not a lawsuit. And I think that's it for the moment, but there were at least 5 or 6 lawsuits filed. Some countries had multiple lawsuits. And so they were trying to use that way to impose an arms embargo. So that's one thing they did. So not only were they accusing Israel of genocide, they began trying to limit Israel's ability to defend itself. So it's not only they were on the propaganda side, they were deliberately trying to interfere in blocking Israel from receiving weapons in order to block these attacks from Hamas, but also Hezbollah, the Houthis, and Iran. So we had the domestic type of lawsuits. Again, these are still pending in some countries. Some countries they've been dismissed. Then we saw the ICJ case for genocide by South Africa. So that heated up in December. And then, so that was going on mostly through the spring. And then we saw in May the ICC prosecutor put in these requests for arrest warrants at the ICC.